G'day guys, Alex here and welcome to episode 184 of the Trademate Sports Betting Podcast. Today I am joined by pro sports bettor Neel Shah once again to answer all of your wonderful questions. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good, thanks. I'm all right now, but let's see how hard these questions are going to be, how much abuse you get. But all good,
Yeah, I
mate.
know.
What about yourself?
Yeah, I know. We officially have some haters after the last, or at least one hater after the last. I think the last two times you've been on, one fella's just reared his head up a few times and had a crack, but I
Oh,
think
it
he's
must be. I think it's
unsubscribed.
my missus. It's probably my missus under like a fake name or something.
Well, she's famously unsubscribed now, so she won't see this. Oh, love it, love it. Well, mate, let's get right into it. Question one from Alexis Weller. He says, "Why are Tottenham still so Spursy?"
Oh, what a great question to start with.
From
It's
Alexis Weller. I've never.
yeah. I mean, you can't. The Spursiness. It's just it's always there. You just never know. I'll give you the story like which kind of illustrates it. So I went to um the West Ham game, at the new stadium recently, and if anyone sort of followed the game, so we went like a goal down. Mood was a bit crappy in the stadium, but still, fine. The guy sitting next to me was just effing and blinding like constantly right during the game, right? And we equalised 1-1, and he's still just shouting at all the players 2-1, like even like 3-1, right? At 3-1, he was acting like we were 2-0 down, and so like my mate next to me was just said to him, "Look, I think we're all right here, with like 3-1 up, like and even at 4-1 at the final whistle, he just looked like he'd just been gone, through the wars, and I don't know. I guess that maybe that symbolises what it's like to be a Spurs fan. You just never know when it's coming. Um, when we were like, what was it, 3-0 up against Man United at halftime, and Ferguson's halftime, team talk was famously lads at Spurs, and they went out and won 5-3. So yeah, but that's part of why I love Spurs. I don't know, because I'm from London. I guess technically, like my local team's Brentford, and I do follow them. Um, but they were like all the way in like League Two. When I was a kid, and back then, you couldn't really follow things like you do with the internet now. And like
Yeah,
my family went into like football, so I didn't go to games. Um, and I didn't really have a team until sort of later on, and then I was just things like that. Just watching that Spurs team, I didn't want to be like the glory hunting kid supporting like Liverpool or Man United, like everyone else at school. I just thought, okay, this team, they play good football, they play exciting football. It wasn't about the winning, well, clearly. So yeah, I guess that's what attracted me to Spurs. So I don't know, yeah, Spursiness is why you tear your hair out, but also why I love them as well.
well, what do you make of Ange's? I don't know. I would say his stick is like I've seen some of his press conferences basically saying that he's here to entertain. And I kind of think, yeah, fair. Like maybe that is true, and maybe he's kind of like trying to bring everyone together, if you know what I mean, like and make it more than just football, if you get what I mean. Like here to have some fun and go on a journey, and you know what I mean. But on the other hand, I kind of think it could potentially just be like a massive facade in terms of like I'm just going to keep saying that I'm all about having fun, because if I say that and we continue to not win trophies, or we um don't get the desired results, then like I have something to fall back on, if you know what I mean. Because I don't know, the media just seem to love him, and like I love him. He's Australian. I think he's an absolute legend. But like, wouldn't you be having a funner time if you were winning?
I mean, yeah, it's an interesting one how perception of him is sort of changed over that time. The thing is, it's in the context of like who's come before as well. So we've had Mourinho, we've had Conte. Like the football has been dire,
Yeah,
and even with him saying that, obviously the objective is to progress, develop, like to win. I think the issue I have, maybe I'm just not hardcore enough of a football fan, but I just think fans' expectations of like all their teams and managers are just unrealistic and just way too unrealistic. There's 20 teams in this league, only one team can win it. Only four teams, 4 or 5 teams can qualify for the Champions League. You might do everything right, but then your opponents might also do everything right. You might prepare like everything in the game, like as a manager, tactically spot on, but then one of your players just makes just a horrendous mistake. Like I'm watching the Bayer Leverkusen game right now, and like Manuel Neuer got sent off after 10 minutes. That's not Vincent Company's fault. Whatever happens from there. So I think I don't know. There's a lot of issues like with the squad. There's still like positions to fill in. Still got kind of some players on the decline. Some players are still developing, but I'm seeing progress, and I guess that's at the end of the day. Like you want to see. All right, fine. If we don't win anything, okay, but then we can look back at some. We've beaten Man U, we've beaten Man City, like comfortably beaten Man City. Beaten twice. Maybe that's not that impressive. The season they're having at the moment, but I think we're getting there, and it's just a question of time. Managers don't get enough time to actually sort of build cohesive squad and a decent unit, and then as soon as his odds were getting shortened to get sacked like a couple of weeks ago, before we got these results because he had a bit of a bad run. So I don't know. Sometimes a bit of perspective is needed, and especially with the media, they just pick up on these sound bites. What you hear, that goes viral is just little clips. When you listen to like the full press conferences, not that I do, there's not really much, of insight there. Although, and managers like Ange do make it a bit more entertaining. Then you can kind of pick up on, what's he going to say? Like we're all about winning, like to your point. But then he makes a rod for his own back, like you say, by saying that. But also, if he's saying we're out to entertain, but the football isn't great, or we're losing 5-6-0 every week, then that's not really going to cut it either. So I guess it's a fine balance. But I'm glad. I think we made a good decision hiring him. I think as long as he's sort of backed, as long as we get some smart recruitment in, and stick with him. I think we've just been inconsistent this season. Like, we'll come up with these brilliant results, and then we'll just draw or lose to mid-table sides that we should really be beating, and that level of consistency isn't there. But if we've shown we can beat, some of the biggest teams and go toe to toe with them, then that I think that's a harder thing to do than just get that consistency. We'll get there eventually.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's enough about Tottenham,
mate. Good first question. Sorry to all the actual people wanting to talk about gambling, but and all the Arsenal fans out there.
All right, Nabil, he has said, if you're placing, this is a good question for you actually, if you're placing bets across multiple accounts, would you need a separate device for each? Otherwise, the IP address surely gets flagged.
Yeah, you would. You want it. I mean, with each bookmaker account you need to sort of imagine you are the bookie, and so so the bookmaker has lots of information on you as soon as you log in. So your cookies in your browser, so where you're logging in from, your IP address. They know what device you're using as well. So all of that kind of stuff comes into mind. Sometimes you can still do it and they don't really care, but at least what I've been reliably told is, especially when it comes to when you're actually, let's say, depositing on an account or withdrawing funds, or especially if you're opening a new account, if it's one of your friends, in this space, you do need to make lots of sort of betting friends, or friends who can help you out with accounts once you're restricted. You need to make sure all of that. There is other, there's other stuff out there that can help you with that kind of thing. So like virtual machines. If I can sort of like plug podcast I did a while back with Smart Betting Club, where I talk about that, again, sort of VPS, sort of private servers or virtual machines, things like that. The software, like I use something called multi-login, and that helps basically sort of kind of trick the bookmaker into thinking that you're in two different places at once. So definitely it's worth investing a bit of time into looking into those kind of things, trying to understand what where bookmakers are coming from with that, because you'll get up pretty quick if you're just kind of logging into loads of different accounts under different names on one device.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I don't have much to add to that, mate. I think you've covered that pretty well. But yeah, I would say like the bigger the bookmaker, the probably the more they're going to look into this kind of stuff. Like if it's like a much smaller bookmaker, they might not have the capacity or or the interest to kind of look into the IP address kind of stuff. Like especially like a Bet365, as soon as you use a VPN with them, like you cannot get into the website. At least that's my experience. So, especially with the bigger bookmakers, they're going to, I would assume, just have a bit more technology to be able to detect this stuff a lot.
Yeah,
quicker.
the other easy solution is just get yourself a couple of phones, with a couple of different SIM cards, and just do it that use a different phone for a different account. That's what a lot of people do.
Yeah.
If you don't feel that comfortable with all the techie stuff, then that's quite an easy solution.
Yeah, no, for sure, mate. All right, question here from Frank. He says, have you used a crypto book before? If so, what was your experience like with them? I have not used a crypto book, mate. I had Gugabe on the podcast. Was that a week and a half-ish ago, 2 weeks ago now? No, I have not used a crypto book before. Have you?
I mean, I've used one or two, not like extensively, but I've also, because I was doing a bit of work with BetDex as well, so I was kind of looking around on their platform, which is really interesting. Because I think a crypto exchange, especially, is sort of very, very interesting. Crypto bookmakers themselves, I mean, I can't say too much on. Again, you'd have to sort of check in terms of their licensing and if they're regulated, all that kind of thing. Because the benefit is essentially that anonymity. I'd assume means that you can kind of get away with restrictions a little bit less, or have a bit longer to play with in terms of pricing. I guess that kind of varies, but I guess sorry about that. I mean, I'm not really the expert. I think the thing is there's lots of opportunities to bet on just kind of traditional soft books and exchanges. I mean, here in the UK, there's don't necessarily feel the need to kind of look into crypto bookies as much, but I'm guessing in other places, there's more of a kind of gap there that it can fill.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good idea if you can to sign up to as many crypto books as possible, because that in the future, the next decade, that's probably going to be something that a lot of that you're just going to have to get used to because of the rise of crypto. So it's probably a good idea to get in now. It was interesting. Gugawa was kind of talking about the betting patterns of people, like based on like how crypto was going at the time, and how like people's how people's betting like in terms of their stakes and stuff like that, and their just overall betting activities change based on like if there's like a risk, like at the moment with crypto going up. It was just interesting to hear like how that relates to people's betting, and how they kind of become a bit more conservative almost when it goes up. I just thought that was quite interesting, and how like you would never, say you've got a Bet365 account, like you would never go and change your staking strategy based on if the pound is strong or weak at the moment, if you know what I mean. Like, so it's just kind of interesting how that dynamic when it comes to crypto.
I think that's also probably a reason why I haven't looked into it too much, because I've looked at crypto and just sort of dabbled with it, but that kind of volatility is something like with Bitcoin. Or I mean, it could work in your favor. Let's say,
Oh yeah.
you open up an account, you open one up like 5 years ago, and you totally forgot about it. Put 100 quid in there, and then you check your balance, and it's like 10 times what it was. That's great, but on the flip side, again, I think at least with fiat currency is relatively stable. But I think a lot of them, I mean, like with BetDex, it's on a protocol which uses USDT, so it's kind of tied to the dollar, which shouldn't fluctuate too much. But I don't know. Looking at the news this year and looking at what's kind of happening around the world, even that in the future. But I mean that's kind of long term. But it's definitely an interesting development. I'm sure, like you know, you're going to have lots more kind of discussions on that, and you know, like other guests kind of in that space, because it's growing all the time. So it's something to definitely keep an eye on. And if anyone's, you know, does regularly use sort of crypto bookies, and you know, feel free to, like, you know, share your experience, pop something down in the comments. You know, definitely we can have a look.
Yeah, no, for sure, mate. All right, Craig here says, what? Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. I just I was reading the wrong question. He says, why do you advise shying away from betting popular sports, which has all the noob money? So I think what he's basically saying is, why would you not bet on, let's just say, the English Premier League, for example? Why would you not bet on that if there's lots of soft money in the market driving the price one way, or driving it the wrong way, I guess you could say? I guess my answer to that would be the noob money, as you would call it, is nowhere near as big as Tony Bloom's money or Matthew Benham's money or any soccer betting syndicate out there. So, yes, there's going to be a lot more soft money in the market, a lot more mug money in the market, and they're going to be placing negative EV bets most likely, but especially if we're talking about the most popular sports in the world. But they have little to, I would say, zero effect on the sharp on you know, on the closing price, let's just say. So I would 100% advise people from betting, if they're just beginning, and maybe, or you know, if you're just doing it for fun, go for gold, bet on whatever you want. But if you're actually trying to be sharp and beat the closing line and try and, you know, beat a sport long term, then I would heavily advise against betting on the NFL, the EPL, the NBA, the biggest sports in the world, the biggest leagues in the world. Just because there's a bit more noob money around, I would definitely say there is the sharpest money in the world there, and that's what actually drives the price. Anything to say on that?
Yeah, I think, yeah, everything you said there, and like to kind of illustrate here, yes, I think it's kind of conflating lots of people, lots of gamblers who are putting money down. I don't. Okay, let's say in, you know, Liverpool, Man City last week or something. You know, let's say there's thousands of punters sort of backing something, but let's say they're all betting, you know, 10, 20 quid, you know, on that. Then you've got one punter, you know, i.e. a big syndicate, putting down 100,000 or 200,000. So,
Yeah,
you know, you work out how much of that market is kind of made up of, let's say, a syndicate, and how much of it is kind of mug money, and what's going to actually move the line. Because if a market's kind of whacked in with that much money all at once, you know, that's what's going to shape it. And also, you know, there's a reason why they're betting that much. You know, generally they have a good idea. They've got very sophisticated models. It's unlikely that, you know, old man in the betting shop has got, you know, like a Python script, you know, with like with all these sort of inputs, and you know, has modeled the Poisson distribution for it all. You know, he's just like, oh yeah, I fancy, you know, Liverpool today. But at the same time, I would say, if you are going to bet on, you know, popular stuff, and it is good for your account health to kind of mix this stuff in there, especially if you want to prolong your accounts, but be selective in your opportunities. So obviously, in hindsight, it's easy to say now, but you know, I did mention it to a few friends of mine who were Liverpool fans. I couldn't work out why Liverpool were the, you know, like 2.2. You know, I got odds of 2.2 on them against City, and I just didn't understand it based on like City's form, you know, based on Liverpool's form, context of the game, Guardiola and his mindset. And sometimes there is a qualitative. Sometimes, you know, there is something you just instinctively feel is just the wrong price. But you know, that's not every week. If you were to go through a card every week, you know, you're not really going to come out ahead. But I would still say you could probably find at least 4 or 5 times a season, even in sort of big sports, where you just think, nah, that's just wrong. You know, the models might say this, they might, you know, say something else, but you know, sort of cherry pick your, you know, what you're going to bet on. And I think, you know, good advice for me was, say, from Johnny from Trading Sports. You know, if you can't write kind of a, if you can't write a couple of paragraphs on your reasoning, you know, for a bet, then it's not really worth a bet. There's just kind of too much uncertainty there. So yeah, I think that's it really. I think the also what tends to be popular now, other things are growing, like prop markets, kind of side markets. If
Yeah.
you look at what the bookmakers are trying to push, and it isn't generally just sort of the money line markets. That's traditionally what gamblers bet on, but they tend to be like the lowest margin products on offer for the bookmakers. They want you to be betting on so and so shots, combining like corners, shots, goals, cards, whatever, into like these builders. And that is what is actually growing. That's what sort of more punters think kind of gravitate towards. So yeah, I mean, I would say kind of it's not that you don't ever necessarily bet on it or you can't win on it, but it's much harder. You do need sort of sophisticated tools to beat those markets if you're betting into them regularly, sort of every week. And there's just easier ways to make a bit of cash betting. That's why I think a lot of us we don't necessarily focus on that. If you're not kind of a big syndicate, if you're just kind of like small time punter like me, like you there's other things that just have a better ROI, and it just makes a lot more sense to bet on.
Yeah, on what you said about bet builders, it was interesting. I was listening to a podcast on Bet the Process. I can't remember what the guy's name was, but he was basically a professional punter who bets on the same game parlays on the NFL. Sorry, and he was saying that he's still he's been doing this for years, and he still has one or two accounts in his own name that he still uses, because even though he's won so much money off them, he says bookies just see same game parlays as they can't lose on that. So it just shows you that a guy that's doing this for a living, who's making lots of money betting on same game parlays, still has his accounts years later, which if you're a professional sports bettor, that's completely unheard of.
Yeah.
So that just shows you how much they want you to be betting same game parlays, and it shows how much they're probably making off those products. So great point there, mate. On the actually to follow on from the big sporting betting on popular sports question, there is a question here about Jake Paul and Mike Tyson fight. Did you bet on that at all?
No. I mean, I was looking at it. Actually, no. I might have had some small bet or something for it to go the distance. Like with some overs on the rounds, because I just thought the whole thing just to me it just seemed sort of staged. Yeah. I didn't think. I was surprised though. I didn't think that. I guess Tyson would sort of if it was sort of a fix, would kind of let himself sort of be defeated. But then I didn't realize his money issues, the extent of it before the fight. But also, yeah, I think that would have been sort of the play for me. But yeah, it's strange, I guess, with combat, especially these kind of boxing fights. Someone who's kind of, I don't know how you describe Jake Paul, because I mean, he's not a complete amateur, but he's not a professional boxer, but he's got to a kind of a high level, but he doesn't ever fight anyone sort of comparable in age. It's always a mismatch. It was the only person he's actually fought. It was like Tommy Fury, who was sort of, you could compare, and he lost that fight. So
yeah,
it was a really odd. Yeah, I mean, because I didn't watch it. So what were your thoughts on it?
Oh well, I just think this is in terms of betting, Jake Paul versus Mike Tyson. I don't know if it was, but if it wasn't, it was unbelievably close to being the biggest betting event of all time. I don't know if it was. I know Mayweather McGregor was up there, and every year, I mean, think of the Super Bowl and stuff like that. But I'm pretty sure that Mike Tyson and Jake Paul was up there with the biggest sporting event of all time. And this is so we're talking about, I guess, popular sports. This is the ultimate anomaly when it comes to betting on popular sports, because this was a popularity contest when it came to the betting, similar to Mayweather McGregor. People I think it's a bit ridiculous, but people will come out and say Mayweather should have been like $1.01 to win that fight. I disagree with that. I mean, maybe like $1.10 or 1.1 or a little bit lower than that. I don't think it was like, it's still a guy that can hit hard, an aging-ish Floyd Mayweather. Like, he could have gotten knocked out potentially. But anyway, but this is like completely different. We're talking about a 50-year-old, what was he, 48 or 50, whatever he was.
58, yeah,
Yeah,
58.
58. Yeah, sorry. Year old man, like, mate, and not a 50 or 8-year-old man who's lived the cleanest life around, and going up against a guy who, whatever you want to say about him, has had professional fights against all sorts of people. I'm sure, like, not the best boxers in the world, like, but he's fought like MMA fighters who were complete, who were strikers, like Anderson Silva. You could kind of say Nate Diaz. Not really. That's probably not a great example, but even like Tommy Fury is a good example. Like, competitive fights with also, professional boxers, and he's like half of his age or less than half of his age, maybe. And he's been a professional. He's lived a professional life for like over 5 years, and it's just. I think these are events where it kind of goes away from, don't bet on popular, sports, because it's very hard to beat them. This was like the complete anomaly. Where that's what kind of
Would you
what I
say
wanted to say.
in the same sort of, was there a kind of Mayweather effect as well? Sort of like kind of Jake Paul was kind of too generous in the betting, sort of, you'd think, from the beginning.
Oh yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
if that fight was replayed again today, I think Jake Paul would be like $1 up 1.05, probably, maybe even less. Like, if Jake Paul came out tomorrow to fight Mike Tyson, he was 1.2. I would absolutely annihilate that line, just like I did when he was 1.45, 1.5 to win the fight against Tyson. It's just like, but anyway, but the question here was it fixed? And from Ryan, and I'm going to. It was not fixed. Like, I'm sure that Mike Tyson
Was it
trying
scripted?
I
Should we
wouldn't. No,
say?
I wouldn't say at all. I wouldn't say anything was
No.
scripted or fixed. But I think Mike Tyson is a very old man, and he was getting paid an absolute, shit ton of money for this fight. And Jake Paul, like, he could kind of do whatever he wanted to. He was probably like, "Oh, I'm not going to go out there and, you know, flatline Mike Tyson." Like, if did you watch the fight at all? Like, it was just,
No.
yeah.
To be honest, like, I mean, even though I'm not like a massive boxing fan, but I'm absolutely not a Jake Paul fan. So it's kind of, it just saddens me that he didn't get knocked out. But it's just the fact, he's got to kind of go up against, like, again, like, this 58-year-old man who smokes through like an ounce of weed a day, like, just it was kind of like, okay, right. Um, this kind of anti-hero story, but like you say, yeah, that's where, if you look at it, you got to look at it objectively, put your feelings to one side, but there's probably, like you say, probably a lot of sentiment driving the prices, or just kind of people who just hate Jake Paul.
I mean, if
Kind
there
of
was one thing that
pile
was,
on.
if you wanted to say it was fixed, the only thing I could potentially come up with that was fixed was that Jake Paul, like, took him to a decision, if you get what I mean.
Hmm.
But you could also make the argument that he was just like, what is the point of me risking, like, knocking out this man? Like, everyone's gonna, like, it's a horrible thing to do. Like, they were friends too, apparently, before the fight. Like, when I can just, like, outpoint him so easily and win a clear decision. So if there was anything that was fixed, maybe it was like someone, like, told him, don't, like, win this by decision and we're going to make a lot more money. I don't know, whatever. But why would you fix that scenario too? Like, if you're going to fix any scenario, you want, like, the most exciting thing to happen. And wouldn't that be like someone getting knocked out? Like, I think the whole fixing thing is kind of ridiculous. And I think you could see that Tyson was, like, actually trying his hardest to win. He was just 58 years old. Like,
Yeah.
mate, like, you can't move that well when you're 58 years old.
But I think this is what's quite interesting though, with these kind of like celebrity fights. compared to like, let's say, professionals who've done it and you've got a track record. Again, like if you're kind of trying to price things, I mean, like even in MMA, there's that element, isn't there, of just sort of different styles and how they go against each other. But something like this, where you've got someone who's kind of like, I guess early on, like was an unknown and sort of Jake Paul, but you've seen him fight, but then just the kind of the range of his opponents going from amateurs or someone like Mike Tyson, who was like one of the greatest, but he's like 2 years away from a bus pass. So how you actually price that, and then kind of the dynamics of everyone kind of weighing in, I find that's quite interesting.
Yeah, I think I just have a much better knowledge. I'm going to sound like an absolute wanker here, but I have a much better knowledge of these aging situations, like fighters aging, because I've seen it in MMA. Like some of, like, I would say, like career-long mid-tier to lower mid-tier fighters beating some of the greatest fighters that have ever come before, just because they went over the age of like 35. And once you go over that age, it's like the deterioration is like it's staggering in some cases, like how quickly people can fall off, especially um, especially certain weight classes and stuff like that. So I think people like, yeah, I think obviously that's what happened in terms of the betting market. Like people don't understand how bad that deterioration can be. It probably takes like someone who's either been a professional or somewhat of a like supreme athlete, and gotten past the age of like 35, 40, and to see that like deterioration in your body and your ability to like recover and all this kind of stuff. Like, yeah, probably takes someone with that kind of knowledge to understand how big that deterioration can be. Anyway,
No, I think it's a good point. It's something to people to think about as well. Sort of factors that, again, the general betting public, maybe they might have a little bit of an idea, but if they're not really following combat sports that closely, or they don't have experience of it themselves, then that's something that's not even on their radar.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a reason why, people retire from football at the age of like 32, 33. Like they just can't hack it anymore. Like Messi and Ronaldo, these guys are like complete outliers. They're like the 0.001% of people in the world. So, yeah. All right, mate. Jeremy, this is a good one for you. Best websites for football stats.
Yeah, so there's a mix of them. There's some good like paid ones. There's some good free ones. So free stuff that I use. I mean, Flash Score is just really handy, like just to have alerts on sort of the general stats coming up. Sofa Score is a good app for phone as well. If you're trading and play, you can kind of see momentum graphs, things like that coming on. Yeah, it depends specifically what you're looking for. Like if you're kind of trying to track like player props or particular things, or there's a lot of software that do similar things, but those are kind of my staples. So they're quite reliable. Trying to think of any other sort of good free ones. Is this like in play or just general?
It just says football stats, mate. I mean, I don't really look at football stats much, but I do like to look at. Sometimes I just like to look at XG and certain other dynamics. Like I've used Understat in the past. Like that's been really fun to look at, like the XG tables. That's really good. And the one I use regularly, or I'll use it every now and then if I just want a bit of feedback from what I've seen on the game to see if I was seeing the right things. Have you used FootMob before? FOTMob?
FOTMob's good. Yeah. FOTMob's really good as well. Yeah, definitely. I forgot about that. I'd say also, for pre-match stuff, footy stats, .org. That's a site that I use for my research, and player stats. Player stats for me is like it's a brilliant site. It's because that's what I use to research my props. So but that's, I think, I don't know how much you get with a free sub, but the main sub's not that expensive per month if you're sort of betting on this stuff, or we want to start betting on team or player props. So that's really good. In terms of in-play stuff, I can plug Trade on Sports. Obviously, like I use them as a tool. I do some work with them. Sort of fantastic sort of in-play trading tool. Pre-match, stats on there as well. If you wanted to make sort of pre-match selections, there are others out there as well. But I'll just shamelessly plug them because I think they're the best.
Yeah, awesome, mate. What else have we got here? From Mikhail, he says, if you started, that's a good question. If you started betting again today, what would be the one thing you would do differently? I can go first. I would be a lot more. I think when I was starting and trying to grow my bankroll, I would like follow a lot of tipsters, a lot of use things like Trademate. Like I wasn't like handicapping or like following, just kind of following, I guess, softwares and like things like I've had him on the past, Edge Alerter, just all those kind of things to kind of get as much volume in as possible, which I think is a great way to get lots of volume in and lots of turnover to follow other people, because it's hard to you're only one person. It's a limited amount of bets that you can actually get in. I think I probably wasn't selective enough. Like wasn't a lot very what's the word? Like it was kind of like, has this person got a positive ROI of 2 to 3%? Then great, I'll follow them. Whereas realistically, let's just say you follow a tipster and they've got a 2 to 3% ROI on same game multis or player props, smaller kind of markets. The prices on those shift very quickly, and I mean, even if you've got someone betting on like lower league soccer or something like that, the prices shift on those very quickly. And unless they have like a huge ROI, you could get to a stage where, like, if you're not getting the exact same price every single time, which is incredibly hard to do, then very quickly following those people can turn into either not worth it, like break even kind of stuff, or negative EV. So I think, and also some people's records they just seem a little bit too good to be true, kind of thing. Like you've just really got to look into this stuff, because there could be like someone's records say they're like a 10% ROI, and then you look at their actual number of bets, or actually look through the bets, and it could just be one or two like really big wins that have carried them through, rather than like consistent eking out of like a 5% ROI kind of thing, like betting like close to even money stuff, rather than like just backing a couple of really big odds wins. I guess that would kind of be just, I'd be a lot more stringent over who I choose to follow. And I guess if it looks a bit too good to be true, then it probably is.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with all that. Like the specific question was like, what would you do differently if you start betting again? Like,
I guess if you just started from, I don't know, when did you start like getting really into the betting? Like you probably had like $1,000 bankroll kind of thing. Like would there be something you'd do differently over the time?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like if I go back to like the Trademate days, I mean, I think I was definitely probably like a beneficiary of like some positive variance when I first started, which was like,
Yeah, your graph was beautiful.
It was good for the videos, but if things weren't, if I got off to a bad start, then would I have done something differently? Would I have changed tack? There's a lot of things I think I could have done differently. I think I agree with you in terms of just kind of maybe like following too many things. I think it's a problem I've had. I've really kind of sorted out this year in just doing too many things. Just kind of, and because it becomes a grind, right? So like I don't know who asked the question, if they're betting quite seriously, if it's their sort of main source of income, or a big supplement to their income. But if it's your day in, day out, there is a kind of, it's a strange combination of sort of tedium but high stress as well, which is kind of like you usually have one or the other. But I think doing this, sometimes you do get that because you're doing a lot of repetitive things. You're kind of in front of the screen all the time, and looking at tipsters where I would look at their records, and whereas I would look at their record, like you're saying, and look at the ROI, look at the long term results, but then I didn't necessarily think about things like, okay, when do they send the tips out? When am I actually available? Realistically, how fast do the prices go?
Yeah.
And that's where I've become much more selective with who I follow now, where it's like, okay, this kind of fits around my routine and like realistically the kind of accounts I'll have, the kind of stakes I want to be, putting down. Um, that would be where I'd look at, and I'd definitely taken more care of my own personal betting accounts. um, I think just I would have kind of pumped more shit through them basically, just to try and prolong them as long as possible. Just so I always had that option, and maybe kind of let's say use my own accounts as almost like backups, or for like anti-post future stuff, big hackers, that kind
Yeah.
of thing, because that's more of a challenge now. Obviously, if you're kind of sourcing accounts from other people, and you kind of uh, you might win a 20 grand bet, but then what the hell do you do if you win it? Good luck getting it paid out to you. So, I'd say that kind of thing. But I think, but also, to kind of not answer the question, but answer in a different way. You kind of you learn as you go along. So I think it is important
Yeah,
to make
100%.
mistakes on the journey. Because I think if you kind of get off to like a perfect start, everything's rosy. You could be in kind of for like a kind of baptism of fire when variance sort of comes the other way, because you're just not used to it. So I think it's important to kind of make reasonable mistakes. Obviously, don't be spunking your whole bankroll and just going bust, but kind of it's okay to play around, do different things. It's like sifting for gold, right? Panning for gold. You're going to be there for a day, and you might get like a little nugget of gold. The same thing, you might try 100 different tips. There's 100 different strategies. 97 of them aren't going to work, but you're going to get two or three that are going to be your mainstays. That work
Yeah,
really well
it's true.
and add to your portfolio. So it is kind of experimentation. The other thing is, I think I wish I sort of took more time to do some learning. At the start, when there wasn't as much financial pressure on me, sort of especially when I was in Qatar. Obviously, my situation is different now, where I just don't have as much time, and I've got a daughter as well, keeps me busy, so I don't have as much time to invest in sort of learning sort of more advanced software, more sophisticated models, things like that. I do it, but bit by bit, and it's hard to carve out time. Whereas if I could go back where there wasn't as much sort of pressure to make X amount of profit every month, I could have sort of spent more time just learning more theory, reading more books around betting, just kind of getting more kind of stuck in to that side of things. If I was to look back, but yeah, you can always look back on anything and just think, okay, I could do X, Y, Z. Also, the landscape's totally different, like now. So what I was doing back then, there were some edges, like on American horse racing, that much harder now.
Yeah.
It's not going back that far. I mean, like I'm trying to remember what's been 3-4 years since I did the sort of started off doing stuff for Trademate.
Yeah, it would have been like 2019, 2020.
Yeah, so I mean, even then, the bookies are a bit more lenient. All the kind of stuff around IPs. I mean, I was betting from Qatar. I was using my UK accounts from Qatar. That I don't think you could even do that now.
Mm.
You'd get flagged pretty quickly. You'd get restricted pretty quickly. For doing kind of some of the things I was doing then. So you just have to adapt and approach it differently. So if I was coming into it now, sort of day one, yeah, it would be kind of learning as much of these things, and I think trying to really master the exchanges, or sort of see where you can find derivative value pricing your own things. That's going to future proof you, when you kind of run dry of accounts. But it's a difficult landscape in the UK. I don't know if I was to kind of start off today and be like, okay, yeah, I'm going to take the plunge into full-time betting in the UK right now. I'm not sure I would, because of all the legislation coming through, how much harder it is to, to get decent stakes on, how quickly you get restricted. There's regulation in place as well for like under 25s. So I couldn't just round up a whole load of students to give me accounts like I could have done 3 or 4 years ago. So yeah, there's a lot to it. It's a difficult question. Also, it depends where you are. Depends what access to bookies you have. Your starting level of knowledge as well. If you already are sort of data minded, sort of numbers minded, there's sort of certain things that you're going to learn, pick up more quickly as well. So
Yeah.
it's a really good question. It's it's a tough one. We'll have to think a bit more about that.
I loved your earlier answer to the question of you basically saying, I wish I just lost more at the start.
Yeah, basically.
Oh, that's classic. Well, following on from that, there's one here from Shane. He says, do you think you will bet sports for the rest of your life? I think this is another great question because I would answer that with yes, but in terms of like what I do today, like doing it professionally full time, I would say most likely I don't think I will be for various reasons. I think maybe one, the market, for me, like just in terms of the sports I've followed for like the last 4 or 5 years, I can see like, for example, in MMA that, the markets are just getting sharper and sharper and sharper. And like, is there going to be a tipping point where it's like not worth betting that sport? But then maybe like I could stop betting that and then bet another sport, if you get what I mean. So it's hard. It's kind of hard to answer in that way. But like just with, I guess we've seen what's going on in the UK. Like, could that come over into Australia, for example? And then push other people to other countries, and people like moving over to the US or something, which kind of seems to be like the place to be in terms of betting at the moment. But then will the US turn into the UK one day kind of thing? And then we're just going to eventually end up with a world of betting where it's like almost impossible to be a professional, and it's just a pure, fun activity for people to do in terms of like how much money you can actually bet. So that's why I'm kind of like, no, I don't think I will be. And also, like, this is quite a stressful job at times. I don't really want to be doing this like at a very at a professional level, like my sole income coming from sports betting in like, into my 50s and 60s, like, you know what I mean? Like, I just like I feel like that's probably not the greatest thing for my health. Like, I would hope that I can kind of make enough money from it over the next like decade or whatever that I can like piss off and do some other things that are a lot better for your health in the future, like, and build and make enough money before that. But I don't know. That's why I kind of say, do I think I'll bet for the rest of my life? Yes, I'm sure I'll do some betting because I love betting, and I'm sure that like even if I wasn't a professional, I'd be able to find some like plus EV bets a couple times a week. You know what I mean? But in terms of doing it professionally, I would say most likely not. What about you?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I was sort of listening carefully to that because I think I'm the opposite, to be honest. Because like, let's say, but I mean, because you were having the odd bet like before you started doing this seriously, so you were always like familiar with sort of betting, even if you were kind of doing mug bets, you were still sort of
Yeah.
doing bets with your mates or like having a look. Whereas, to be honest, I wasn't at all. Like I had a stint working for IG Sport in London. I was a bet taker there, but I wasn't really interested in betting. It was just like, oh yeah, this is like a great sort of part-time job. All the screens are up, all the football's on, all these sports here. Can you do some basic maths? Can you answer the phone? And not fuck up customer bets. And that was kind of all there was to it, to the job. And I just thought, yeah, all gamblers are mugs. No one actually wins at this. You get the odd person coming through and they'd have like a sort of black banner flag on their account, and you sort of have to check with the traders. And to be honest, I kicked myself that I didn't really learn much of the time. I briefly crossed over with Matthew Trenhell, who was there at the time. And I don't know exactly what he was doing, but again, he was one of the traders. The traders were over there us kind of lowly bet takers were, on the other side of the office. But yeah, it would have been a great opportunity to learn something back then, but I just kind of dismissed sort of betting as, it's a mug's game, and only sort of later came into it sort of as a kind of hobby to pass the time, thinking, oh yeah, in the summer looking at football trading, and then stumbling upon it. So I've always seen it as more of a kind of investment. I guess I don't have the natural interest or inclinations, for stocks and shares, crypto. That would be something, maybe I'd like to look at in the future, but it's much harder than all these kind of YouTube gurus make out. And so for me, yeah, I think if I wasn't doing this as a means of income, I don't think I would. I don't think I'd
That's
just
funny.
yeah.
Like I just like, for example, like for myself, if I'm watching the UFC on the weekend, there's 12 fights, let's just say, and I've got like actual plus EV bets on 6 to 8 of them. Let's say the other four fights, I have to put like something on them to watch them. Otherwise, I just like I can't sit there and watch it without having like I know that is like degenerate. So like, but I'll be having 50 times more the amount of money on the ones that are plus EV. I just have to have like
but you
I
need an
just have to have
interest.
something on that fight to like give me a reason to watch it. Otherwise, I really struggle to tune in.
Yeah, no. I totally get that, and I think there's a lot of people will be the same. I don't know, maybe I'm unusual in that way, but I just kind of see it as it's a means to an end. But I mean, I enjoy elements of it, but I think because I've done it for so many years now, it's kind of like I think to try to kind of at least for me, like to try to be successful at it, I've had to like sort of detach myself completely. So I don't really enjoy like watching anywhere near as much football as I used to. It's on in the background, and then sometimes I try and sort of keep up with it, but sometimes I just kind of get sick of watching sports, and I'll just have something else
Yeah,
on YouTube, or just what was I watching? Just like some nonsense like Star Trek the other day, just kind of clear my mind a bit from it, because otherwise it's kind of becomes all consuming.
yeah,
And then yeah, I don't know. And if I was working full time doing something else, I mean, yeah, I'd like to say, but I probably would. But I find like the balance of if you're doing a regular job and you're doing the betting, and I know some people can do it, and people say on here, look, put 15, 20 hours a week into it. Maybe for me, I'm just like I'm not like a super high energy person. I need my sleep. Um, like I'm not like the best of shape. I've got family commitments, things like that. It's kind of like sometimes you just want to chill the hell out. So it's like, well, that's fine, because this is essentially my 9 to 5. But if I was doing a 9 to 5, and then if I think, and also knowing what we know, like you I think would again you'd kind of you'd only be trying to put on as much value as possible. So like you were talking to Dan, weren't you? Like and I was listening to that, and again he was saying with his bets, because he's not kind of a full time, like he has a day job, doesn't he? And then he bets
yeah,
seriously spare time. But again, even with that, he's not kind of just putting on fun bets. Like there's a rationale, there's a reason for all of his bets. There's a thought process to that. And same thing with me. It's just like, okay, well, what would I do? Maybe I'd still put on like some weekly golf bets. If a big sort of festival was on, might do that. But then I think I'd just I just whatever my day job was, I'd just be like, oh yeah, just sack this off. I'm just gonna pull a sickie and just like just smash through the card today. So I don't know. I kind of feel like for me it would have to be all or nothing. Like it just I'd kind of feel
yeah.
like I wouldn't be quite here or there if I was sort of doing it on the side. But I'd love to be able to. I mean, that's a great thing. If there's still edges, if there's still things you can bet on, this is something I could do until I'm like 70, 80. You don't have to be doing it at the same crazy pace though, right? So
No,
ideally, what you'd want to be is kind of to build your bankroll, through life savings, whatever, where you could be making like one bet a week, a couple of bets a week. You can actually take your time, really, and stake big, put on like lots of kind of futures bets, and then by that point in your life, hopefully it's not really about the money, it's the puzzle, it's the intellectual challenge to keep yourself sharp. I'd love to be doing that. I don't want to be working a full-time job, when I'm 70. I'd love to be able to, have this as an income, other kind of side incomes. I mean, very privileged. Like it's tough. I'm in London. Like, there's a lot of expenses, and I'm far from a big timer at all. Like, I'm very small time, but I'm able to make decent living, and probably and a bit more than probably what I would make just doing a regular job with my experience and other things. I'm very lucky, very fortunate to do that. To fit everything around what I'm doing, and then there's no reason why couldn't do that sort of later down the line. But yeah, I mean, the guys, let's say they're at syndicates and they're kind of in their 50s. I couldn't be doing that. Doing those kind of long hours. Like these guys in the finance world, you kind of want, if you're sort of trapped in that world. Well, I mean, trapped is one thing, but maybe they love it, right? Some people love that buzz of like working, every hour,
Yeah.
every day. Whereas I think other people want that quality of life, and want to find a kind of balance with it. So I think something like this, if you anything, right, sports betting or any, like my sister, she makes her own like jewelry, and she's got her own sort of jewelry business. She does like market stalls and kind of sells online. It's really hard work though, and she could probably earn more if she was in a regular job, doing as a graphic designer or a product engineer, what she studied. But she loves it, and she's quite happy doing it. And if you've got some kind of craft or skill that can pay the bills, and you can be your own boss, for me that like outweighs everything. Like if you can do it. But who knows? Like you say, like what's the landscape going to be? As much as maybe I'd love to do that, maybe there won't be any choice by that point. The gambling industry will be sort of dead in this country, or it's just not the kind of stakes you can get on. It's just kind of pointless. So time will tell. But yeah, good question.
Yeah, no, good stuff, mate. We'll skip a few questions. We've gone a bit over time here. We'll go to the last one. I think this is a fun one. And thoughts on the EPL title race, and whether you guys are considering any outright bets. You did mention outright bets just in your last answer. I'll get a little. I got the odds checker odds up so people can have a general idea. And just keep in mind that we are recording on the 4th of December on or Tuesday night for you, so 3rd of December. So there's probably going to be 2 rounds of games played by the time this comes out. So keep that in mind. We could be made to look very stupid or like absolute geniuses. Have you had any outright bets on the market?
I had some free bets because they're like I had to use them on the outright on the Prem, and so I managed to get Liverpool at 3.8.
Oh, wow.
And I'm sure they're much better odds now. I haven't looked recently, but obviously, that was before City kind of collapsed. So what have we got there? What are they?
They're 1.57. Yeah. I'll see what they are on the exchanges, because that's probably a better tell. Oh, yeah, 1.67. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it now, bar like a spectacular collapse, you're gonna have to say Liverpool really. I think there was a stat somewhere that maybe I think only like a couple of times in history where team that sort of goes in at Christmas top of the league has lost the title. That's like going beyond even the Premier League. That's like Division 1, like the old Division 1. So it looks like they've got it sewn up, bar sort of a spectacular collapse. You guys will have to go on like the run of all runs and hope that they drop points. It's kind of I don't see how that's going to happen from here.
Well, the big thing is that there is a lot of games left. Like, we are a third through, or just over a third through the season. So, yeah, it's a very, very long way to go. I think people, like last year, I think they showed with 20 games left, or no, maybe 18 games left. God, I can't remember. I mentioned on a podcast a couple of weeks ago, but I think Arsenal were 5 to 6 points behind Liverpool or something,
with 18 games left, and we ended up beating them by a decent margin. I can't remember how much, but it would have been at least 5 to 6 points we ended up beating Liverpool by. So that's like a 12-ish point swing in 18 games or 20 games, something like that. So it can be done. And I think the odds are like reasonably reflective of the moment of everything that can happen in a season. But I bet Arsenal at 450 about 10 days ago-ish. You can't get that price now, but I do believe, I know I'm an Arsenal fan and I'm tremendously biased, but Arsenal have had the most horrendous luck this season so far. And I believe they are a better team than Liverpool. It's just a matter of whether they can make that gap of 9 points up in, 24 games ish, something like that. Yeah, 24 games. And I think 24 games that's a lot of games. So I'm not saying they will make the gap, but I think in terms of the odds, I think it should be closer. I would have Liverpool closer to even money and Arsenal, maybe closer to threes-ish right now, because they can obviously continue to get bad luck. But yeah, shocking injury luck. Odegaard's missed most of the season. He's like our most important player, you could say, or up there with him and Saka. And, have other players miss games too, but more importantly, they've had 3 red cards. And if those 3 red cards didn't happen, you can make a valid argument that that's like at least a 5 to 6 point swing in, and that would put them just behind Liverpool right now. So, whereas Liverpool, I don't know what they're at now, but at least the first 10-ish games of the season, they had one of the easiest draws. And yeah, they've beaten some good teams since then. But I do think luck has very much been on their side so far, whereas Arsenal have been extremely unlucky. And yes, it's a huge gap. 9 points is quite big, but it's also 24 games. So a lot can happen in that 24 games. Like Salah could get injured tomorrow. And if Salah got injured tomorrow, you can seriously make the case that Arsenal should now be if Salah was out for the rest of the season, you could seriously make the case that Arsenal may be a favourites to win the Premier League all of a sudden. But then, Saka could get injured the day after. You know what I mean? So much shit can happen in 24
I'm
games.
not for sure, because I mean, even with Salah, with his contract situation, but they've still got Diaz, they've still got Gakpo, they've still got quality up front. Trent's been out. Trent, I mean, Trent's probably, again, it's such an important player for that team. Conor Bradley's coming. And by the way, look, just for full disclosure, I hate Liverpool and Arsenal, right? So this is like a purely neutral, objective view of this. But yeah, I mean, there might be some room in the price, but if you look at Liverpool's results so far, yeah, fine. You can say there's an element of luck, but it's ridiculous. The way they kind of swatted aside Real Madrid, right? Just comfortably. There's a meme of Mbappe on his ass, when Van
but
Dijk.
This isn't Real Madrid.
It doesn't matter, right? As in, there's very few English teams in recent history who've kind of beaten them that comfortably. It's not the scoreline; it was kind of the manner of how they did it. But just their results throughout the season. The only blip they've had was against Forest, and again, they've had difficult games. And yeah, I think there's room in the price. The way you might want to look at it is to kind of trade off them if you think again there's kind of 1.6. It could drift out. There's going to be fluctuations. Is kind of to time it. Have a look at the fixture list. See, who have Arsenal got the next 5. Who have Liverpool got the next 5. Look at when again sort of Champions League, the cups get underway, where there might be potential with the injuries, rotation. So there's smart ways to let's say to trade it. I wouldn't want to back necessarily Arsenal. Even at these prices. Even the City, they could easily just go on an unbeaten run once they kind of fix whatever is going on there. But at the same time, then they've got this threat of all these charges hanging over them. So that's kind of factored in a little bit to the price.
The other thing that City have in their favour is the transfer window in a month, and they could, if they want to, just go ballistic.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, it's definitely interesting. I mean, there's other markets you can play. Like if you've got access to sort of spread betting accounts, or on some of the bookies where they've got winning margins or kind of like a points handicap. I think they have that on 365. So that could be one way to play Arsenal if you think again they're going to close the gap, but maybe not quite do it. You can get some kind of value there. But I think, yeah, I mean, I'm looking at so these kind of free bets I've got, across a few different sort of accounts, and things like I think Arsenal were 2.9 at one point, Liverpool were 3.8, City were 2.4 at one point, 3.35. So it kind of fluctuates, and yeah, there's definitely room. There could be like a big injury crisis. These players are playing so many games that you're going to see a lot more injuries. I think with across all the big leagues this season, can have a big impact. So yeah, I mean, good luck with the Arsenal bet.
It doesn't really matter because if I lose, I'm going to be upset anyway. So it's like, even if I win, it's like, well, I'm not going to be that happy about the bet. I'm just going to be happy they won the title. So it's kind of just a win-win situation, isn't it?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, it's my worst nightmare. It's either going to be Liverpool or Arsenal. It looks like. So either way, it's not great for me.
Yeah, I would say also Chelsea. I don't think that like $19 or whatever they were was like, it's like the worst price ever on Chelsea, just because, like. I would say like one of the hardest fixtures Arsenal had this year was when we played Chelsea. Like I thought they were one of the better teams we played so far this season. So it could be like a weird. It just because Man City are so far off it, like it could turn into like a weird season where like Arsenal maybe just continue to get a few more injuries. Liverpool like have been overperforming maybe the first, because overperforming the first 15 fixtures or whatever. And Chelsea could just, they're a new team, new coach. Like you don't know what is actually could be made of them. Maybe they're overperforming right now, but I don't think like 20s or 19s on Chelsea is like the worst bet ever. Like I think you could, I feel like they could potentially be like the only bet worth taking right now, maybe, but whatever.
You get 200 to 1 on Spurs.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. No,
I mean,
Spurs, they'll go from 200 to 1 into like evens to win the title, and you'd be like, "Oh my god, I placed the greatest bet of all time," and then they'll just lose 5 games in a row.
I mean, for me, I would look at like the top 4 market. Would be quite interesting. Don't know if you get that up on screen, but like, I mean, it's a banker. It looks a banker. Liverpool, Arsenal, City are going to get there, but who knows? Again, with the City situation, they suddenly get docked like 50 points, then that opens up a space. But again, we're 4.5s to get top 4. I wouldn't be touching that. United 6.5s again. Can you trust them? Even with Amorim, like there's a big rebuild there. You've got Brighton 6 to 1, right? You've got like Newcastle 9 to 1. Because of the kind of level of consistency with that kind of pack of teams, I think there's a bit of value there potentially to look at as well. You saw like Villa kind of squeak in there last year. Again, they're 10 to 1 again this time. So generally, when I look at these outrights, it's not that I necessarily do play them, for that much or with that much interest, but I tend to look at again like the top 4, the relegation markets. Because there's a bit more volatility and I guess that it comes down to like when you're looking at teams at the top of the table, the teams at the top are generally the most consistent, the most predictable, and it makes it harder to read, right? Sometimes with the kind of gaps that they have, the fixture list they have, but then again these teams slightly lower down, you've got that degree of unpredictability which opens up again double-digit odds. I think sometimes you get some nice plays there.
Yeah, I agree, mate. Well, let's call it a day there. Thanks once again. I am still here. Thanks once again for everyone tuning in, and thanks for joining us today, Neil, mate. Tremendous insight as always.
Oh, cheers, enjoyed that. Yeah, definitely. Hopefully everyone got some interesting answers. Sorry for all the Spurs chat, but looking forward to it. Hope we can do a part 2 in the future.
You somehow had to bring Spurs into the Premier League title race debate, didn't you?
Banker, 200 to 1. 10
Love it. Thanks everyone for listening.
If you're on the channel for the first time, make sure you like and subscribe. And if you're looking to implement some of the strategies we talked about today, more so the value betting ones, start a free week trial of Trademate Sports. Cheers, mate. Catch you soon.